Welcome. Welcome very warmly, and I would like to introduce you today our dear Karen, because I have invited her to give us solutions, help, guidelines, what to do with our children when they have tantrums. And I think she knows what she's talking about because most of all, she's a mother of three children, three adult children, and she also have three grandchildren, at least one of whom has special needs. So she knows from life, not only from theory, all kinds of different points of view for children. She is a writer and the author of 52 Ways to Parent Happy Children, but most of all, she is a family therapist with a master in educational and developmental psychology. She likes to also write, bring joy to others, and be creative. And okay, I will tell you, but when I read this, I was surprised because do you know what she said? That she likes to dance when no one is looking. Mm-hmm. So please welcome Karen, and thank you for accepting invitation.
Thank you, Joanna. I'm really happy to be here because helping parents is a real passion in my life. I think it's the most important job in the world. And we get hardly anything to equip us for this huge task of creating and nurturing the next generation, human beings. And that is the most creative and most important thing that anyone can do in the whole world. So I'm really passionate about helping parents navigate that because it can be really difficult.
It is. It is. I know. I would like go straight to subject. I will tell you or read in December 15, 2003, an issue of Time magazine, an article appeared, Does Kindergarten Need Cops? So do we need cops? Why we need cops? Why children? Why do they have tantrums? Why they are not good children? Why?
That's a really good question. I think what I discovered is that children act out of what's in their heart, and they don't know what's in their heart. They can't tell us. But when children are content and they feel beloved, they're at peace, they are not frightened, they feel very safe, then they tend to behave in ways that are not frightening, that are safe for others, and that are kind to others. And when children are struggling with really big emotions that they can't describe to us, it's like there is like a volcano inside them. It's like an iceberg. Like on the top, you can see a little bit, but underneath there's massive amount of stuff. And so if a child is behaving well and happily and kindly, then the stuff underneath is really good stuff. And if the child is struggling with what's underneath, then what comes out is like their communication of their struggle, and it's much harder for them to manage their behavior. So I think understanding that is important. And maybe the kindergarten needed cops because there are times when what a child behaves because they need more time, connection, attachment with their parents. And when they don't have that, sometimes that's part of their big pain in their iceberg.
So is it like the thing that is under the water on iceberg, those emotions, are those emotions a parent's fault?
No, I don't think we can say they're a parent's fault. I think they happen for all sorts of reasons, and it's not just what the parent does or says. I think there as parents, we have an enormous amount we can put into a child that we don't realize that will really help them. And also children bring something. Every one of them is created differently. They're wired differently. Mm-hmm. We are wired in a certain way. And sometimes the wiring of one person, like a parent can be wired one way and a child another. And so it's how do you work out that way to connect when wired like really differently? And so I think there's all sorts of things that go on inside a child and around them that shape their behavior and that shape us as parents. There are things, though, that I have found that really, really help children and build like the attachment in a way that helps them often to behave. It helps them manage themselves and their behavior better when we understand some of their relational needs and like attachment needs and how we do that. And sometimes it just gets called attachment, and we think, well, yeah, how do we do that stuff? And so I find that it's good to break it down into different things. Like they need affection in different ways because they're wired differently. Some like hugs, some don't, some like words. They need like encouragement. They need to know they're special to us. They need to feel safe. We need to respect them as well. We need to take away their fears where we can and understand what those fears are, because sometimes they don't make sense to us at all. And so the more that we can help children feel safe, connected, secure, and loved and happy, then we're really helping with that. And it's about really looking at the child and thinking, what do they need? How can I build a strong connection with them that helps them to flourish?
A quick guideline for parents, because when children are in kindergarten for most of the time of the day, when they are in the evening back at home, all parents and maybe older siblings and the children, they are tired. The whole family is tired and also stacked with many different emotions after the whole day: stress, tiredness, hunger, everything. How to deal with it, how to manage this, how to organize maybe time so it will be time for creating this space, for creating those emotions or attachment points. How to do it when all people are tired?
I mean, it's really hard when everyone's tired, and I totally get that. And I remember that myself, and I see that with my grandchildren. And that's not easy. I think, though, when we can find ways to manage that, it is more helpful. And some people talk about like a decompression chamber. So when you've been out there busy doing all kinds of stuff, and then you come in just to be aware of all that's happening there and create some space for peace, for connection, and have a little ritual about coming home where there's maybe play some quiet music and have gentle conversation about the day. Don't just say, how was your day? But find some different ways to talk about the day, and listen to some peaceful music, light a candle. Just find a way to connect calmly, give people space, and realize that people are different, need different things when they're in that decompression chamber. And it doesn't have to take very long, but I think it can really help make that transition easier. I think if we all come home and all rush into different stuff and there isn't a connection, particularly a child who's been longing to be with parents all day can just sometimes fall apart in that moment because they really want the full attention, presence, closeness, attachment of a parent, and they rush off to make the dinner or do something else. So I think it's recognizing that connection. Some parents I've seen will go with their children like to a little cafe after school and just sit face to face with them and have a nice drink and just talk, debrief the day. I will take them to a park and play and run around and be somewhere nice, have moments of like wonder and laughter and peace. And those sorts of things can just help buffer that zone so it's a little less chaotic. I don't think it will make it perfect every day. Some days everything just implodes. I know that. But if we keep in mind that we just need this space to reconnect securely together as a family in a peaceful, calming, loving way, that can often just help those moments to go a bit better.
So does it mean that children's needs, they are more important than parents' needs?
That's a tricky one to say. I think everyone's needs are important. And I think as parents, we need to be mindful of the children's needs because we're the ones responsible for that. And we can have our needs met in other ways, or we can learn to delay the gratification of our needs. And so I think it's really important that we are fully present and aware of our children as much as we can, because there are some times when it's just too much for us as well, and we need to go and find a quiet space to and just kind of rebalance ourselves, and to be aware of that. I know someone who will come home or go to meet their children and have some space. And so they leave their work, then they go to pick up their children, but they make sure they have 15 minutes space to walk through a park. So they park in a different place. They walk to the school or the kindergarten through a nice park, and walk back with the child through the park and look for moments of wonder, or do something special, or share a treat, and then go back to the car just to kind of help themselves. So I think it's being aware, okay, what do I need? And just to pause, because I think we can too easily rush from one thing to another because we're so busy. And I think it's often in the busyness and rushing that we can get jumbled up together and not always be aware. So I would say that as a parent, we need to be focused and aware of the children's needs, and also find, if I'm overwhelmed by my own needs, is there somewhere else, something else that can help them manage this? And so that we can, so, it doesn't have to be all about me, because I'm, sometimes on empty. And so maybe the other parent or a friend, or children can go to another family for an hour, and you pick them up. What will work for you, so you can meet them and engage with them really positively when you connect. Because when we part in the morning and when we connect again in the evening are really crucial times in the relationship. And how we do that sets a tone for what happens afterwards, and lets us know we're connected, we're safe, we're welcomed, there is joy and peace here. And so those connection times are actually really crucial.
I have another question. Yes. You said that we have to be aware of children's needs. So does it mean that when we are aware, when we take care of them, there won't be any tantrums?
It's not a magic bullet. I would say that when we understood about what children's attachment needs were, and there's 10 key ones, and I'll do a discussion on that another time. And we decided that we were going to be intentional about meeting those needs once we knew what they were. You can think, well, that's massive, meeting all these different needs. But actually, what happened was that a lot of them can be met in one sentence, in less than a minute. And so that, but once we've done that, it somehow something flowers in their heart.
Can you give an example? Like at least one.
Yes. So children need to know that they're special, special to us. And so even just saying to them, I'm so glad I'm your mom. I'm really glad that you are my child. And that can sound so small. It doesn't take much, but their face, you can see that just something in them like beams and opens up. And that's a really precious, that you are precious to me and you are beloved to me and you make me happy, is a really important message. It can be, children need affection, so they like it in different ways. It could be a hug, or I love you, I'm so glad we're back together again, or pat on the back, or a tickle, or something like that. And that can just be, once we're intentional about making a positive attachment with them, saying thank you to them, appreciating them, even for the tiny things that they do. Thank you for not dropping your litter in the car on the way home. Just then they kind of beam when they hear our appreciation. And so saying little things that let them know we love them, we care for them, we've noticed what they're doing well, can be just really a lot bigger than we think. And when we invest those little moments, I find that it doesn't take much to do that, but the outcome is bigger, much bigger than the input in the child.
Have you done this with your children?
Yes, I did. We did this. I can honestly say we did this. And when we started to do it, we noticed that we very, very rarely had to deal with their misbehavior.
But you still have to deal with them, yes?
Yes, always. But really, it was much rarer once we started to do this, because it was filling up the bottom of the iceberg, or whatever it is being filled up with good stuff about themselves. They felt good about themselves. They felt loved. They felt safe. they felt appreciated, they were encouraged, and they were respected, all of those good things. And once that builds up, they have a sense of well-being here, which helps them to behave better with others. And we really saw that in our family. And I had very diverse children with very different wiring and needs. And what was interesting to me, I mean, it was obviously there were things we had to deal with in their behavior. But my youngest one, who was kind of the most mischievous one, he said to me, Mom, I can never remember you telling me off. It's like, oh yeah, we did actually. So don't think that never happened. But I think it's because there were just small corrections we had to make rather than massive things. And it really helped when they were teenagers as well. So just having that in mind really helped us. I saw the difference in our children's behavior, and other people who tried it have also said that basically every time we build this attachment with our child in one of these loving ways, it strengthens the bond between us, and they know it's there. It's filling up like their love cup. And then what pours out is love. But if the cup is filling up with pain, then what comes out is pain and hurt. But it's also understanding behavior, because not all things that we want to discipline are children's misbehavior. And that's another podcast, I think, another issue.
Yeah, but I think when you fill this cup with good things, with attachment, then when the tantrum is going on, the child knows that he can also come back to you. They know that they can come back, because many times I think the children, they are just running away from parents, and it's bad. So if I understood this properly, I will repeat this aloud, that you pay attention to build trust, to build attachment, connection with your children, and still tantrums happened sometimes, maybe not so often. You saw the difference, but those behavior, they still happened. Am I right?
Yes. They
Okay.
still
I'm asking because many times I heard that when you pray enough, like a lot, when you spend more time with God, your children, they are just almost holy. And I so much disagree with this sentence, so much, because this is just life.
It is life. And yes, obviously prayer is important, but prayer doesn't fix things. Children need human beings, parents, to be investing in that relationship with them. I've seen parents who are so piously praying they are disconnected from their children. Children they need us to connect with them and attach with them so they can have a loving picture of God, because that's what shapes their picture of God. And when they feel loved by us, then they will flourish better. It has so many more positive outcomes, and they will also have a much better picture of who God is. So life is life, and however much we attach and bond and pray and do all the right things, children are going to have a tantrum, because the world is a complex place that we can't control. Children are complex individuals that we can't control, and we're not supposed to control them. And we're supposed to guide them, but control is a different thing. And also they're wired differently. And they have moments like, there's sometimes when I'm really exhausted. And quite honestly, if I was a child, I'd throw a tantrum. But I've learned as an adult to manage myself and manage my emotions and what's happening to me, and to filter the stimulus that I'm experiencing. So we just have to say these things are natural. It doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. It doesn't mean your child is a bad child. But sometimes things come together, the context, what's going on in the child, what's going on in your life, things that are out of our control just mount up, and then, tantrum will happen. But a tantrum does not mean you're a bad parent or that you're a bad child. It's an opportunity to connect in a different way. And it's a child's way of saying, often I need some connection here. And we'll talk about the different kinds of tantrums later.
It really helped me to, when my child, he had tantrums, to look at those situations as an opportunity to learn, like which skill does he need to develop, to behave better, to learn, because he doesn't know those things. It's
Yes,
like
yes.
book to learn. Okay, so people are saying that children are connected to aggression so much as smoking to cancer. So those
Okay.
are like two things that you cannot separate. They are just, when you see children, you see aggression. This is like obvious. Is it like so? Can we protect our children from aggression from others? Because maybe we have a good relationship, we have a good connection with children, and they have just sometimes tantrums. But we are in a world, we go to church, for example, and our children can be exposed to behaviors that we don't want them to see or experience. What to do with those situations?
I think it's about talking to your child about what's happening if they see something like that, that you think, this is not a good example of behavior. But also understanding that any child who is aggressive, it's actually communicating the pain that's in their own heart that is there for some reason or other. And to understand, there's a basic principle that hurt people hurt people. And so the more hurt and afraid or unconnected a child feels, the more they may become aggressive just to express what's going on because they don't have the words. And or maybe it's that they're wired in a way that they find it very difficult to make sense of and understand and tolerate what's happening around them. And so when someone's being aggressive, it's helping your child know how to keep themselves safe, how to see the other person. So when someone is aggressive, just say, depending on their age, something like, I want to stay safe, so I'm just going to go away for a little while until you calm down. Say something that doesn't inflame the other child, but just have a clear boundary. If a child is aggressive and you're afraid, you don't have to stay there. You'll say, I want to be your friend, and when you calm down, I'll come back. If you want to be a friend, sometimes they might not want to be. And to explain that when children feel really upset, sometimes this is their way of just saying they're upset. It's not about you. It's they can't manage the distress that's in their life right now. So that can be helpful. The other thing that I think is really helpful is that children also, they naturally live in a world where they're the center of the universe, and it takes them a while to develop things like empathy. It takes them a while to develop their communication skills, and we have to see tantrum as a communication of like, I can't cope with this, is basically what they're saying. I can't cope with what's happening, is most of the time what they're saying. And so they have to, help them to give voice to their emotions. Say, oh, it sounds like you're feeling this, let's try and do this. So then you give them an emotion, a name for it, and give them a way to deal with that emotion so that they learn how to deal with that and to express it. And also help them to learn kindness, to think about what other people need. We treat people with kindness where we can. We say kind things, we do kind things. And when children fall out, as they will, and maybe someone hits, they hit their friend, say, okay, let's stop here. Let's just talk about this. So the friend will say, when you hit me, I felt this and this. And the child who hit might say, when I hit I say, what was your hand saying when you hit? If your hand could speak and it had a big speech bubble, what would it want to say? And it might say, oh, stay away from my toys, or I want that, or whatever. And then when they've talked about what's happening, then the child who hurt the other child, and maybe they both hurt each other, they need to do something kind for the other. So the punishment is not being yelled at, it's helping them to talk about what happened and then say, okay, this happened, but we're aiming for kindness. Everyone is happier when we learn to treat each other kindly. And so I wonder what the person who was hit would really like you to do for them that would be kind right now. And it might say, well, I'd like him to share his toy, or I would really like a drink of orange juice, or I'd like to have a hug and make friends again, whatever. And you try and help them to repair. And that's what was important when you were saying about the repair is so important. When a child knows the parent is investing in repairing the relationship, because we repair the brokenness quickly. We don't leave the child ever wondering, does mum or dad love me? Mm-hmm. We repair quickly so they always know that is there. And then they have that security. When this is all over, I'll still be loved. And that's how God treats us, you know? He understands. I really love the bit in Psalm 103 where God says, you know what? I made you from dust. I remember that. And I love that because it says, I made you out of mud. You'll get muddy. You'll get dirty. You'll break. I understand that. I love you anyway. And Psalm 103 just tells me so much about God's love. And actually, that's where I go to fill my heart up when it's a bit empty, so that I have, I can feel connected to God, so that makes me like a more calm and happy person to parent my own children. And so I find that is just a really useful thing to be aware of. And so just as God loves me, absolutely no matter what I do or say, then when children know that we love them no matter what they do or say, that gives them such a sense of security, and it helps them to know, to experience God in that way as well, which is what we really want.
So we can show anger or not?
Yes, we can express anger, and the Bible very nicely says, in your anger do not sin. So it's like, don't be angry, but just be careful how you express it. What is really helpful about anger is what we call a secondary emotion. So there's usually another emotion that is fueling the anger, but we often go to anger so quickly like that we don't even stop to think what the trigger was. And for example, you lose your child in a crowd, and you find your child, you just go like really mad at them. And instead of being so glad you found them, you're like, why did you do that? And that's because the fear has made us angry. So behind that anger is this fear. Sometimes behind anger is sadness or disappointment or hurt or some other kind of thing. When we can stop and think, what is it behind my anger? What is going on there? And deal with that feeling. Even guilt, that can help us to deal with the anger. Actually, what I call it is frustration, because actually most of the time we're frustrated. And when we call it frustration in ourselves and in others, it invites more support. If I say, I'm really frustrated about this, then people come in and go, oh, how can I help you? If I say I'm really angry about this, they might go, oh, okay, she's angry. Let me just, I'll just
avoid you.
Else. Yes. and quite often it's frustration. And I think it's important that we try to, when we're angry, say things calmly and behave calmly. But if we don't, the important thing is we go back and repair. We say, I am sorry. Mummy should not have said that. I should not have done that. It was a wrong thing for me to do. I'd managed my anger badly. And let's press reset and go back. And now that I'm feeling better, this is what I want to say and do. And that reset button is often really useful for the children as well. So they can behave all over the place. And I'll say, okay, let's take a few breaths. That helps as well. Actually, you can blow bubbles. That really helps. It helps to calm me, helps to calm them. Let's blow some bubbles. And we calm down and we press a reset button and say, okay, now we can reset. Let's think about how we could do that differently. And that can be a learning experience rather than letting something escalate. Because if we get angry with an angry child, that's just going to get, it's going to explode, because then they start to feel unsafe. They start to feel afraid. If we raise our voice, it really troubles them. And so then they become even more overwhelmed with their difficult emotions and harder to manage themselves.
I would like to recommend also one more way of dealing with those situations is telling, this was not polite, we can handle this differently. Do we want to turn back the time? Oh, yes. And then you have to move back to the place where you have been, and children also. And in a fun way, they learn and they can practice or go one more time through situation when they handle differently. So it is very helpful as well. But I would like to ask you, how old children can be when we can start to say I'm sorry to him? Is it start like 6 or 7, maybe adults, like teenagers?
I think as soon as they're born. I think as soon as they're born, I think so. So that if you accidentally hurt them when they're babies, or something goes wrong, just start saying that, oh, I'm so sorry I hurt you. I didn't want to do that. It was an accident. Because then it becomes so second nature.
But where is the authority? Where is the authority of a parent then?
Oh, parent can have authority, but it's different from offering an apology. So you say sorry. And what it is that we're all on a journey through our life to grow in God, and we all make mistakes. And actually, the sooner that we say sorry to our children, the sooner they will also learn to say sorry to us. And so I think it's a really important part of helping them to say sorry to God as well. So I think there is no starting point or ending point for parents to say, I am sorry. I'm human. I messed up. Give me another chance. Or I'm really sorry that I accidentally hurt you. Even if it's an accident, say sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Or I'm sorry that I yelled. I want to do it differently next time. And so I'm now going to try and say it in a quiet voice to practice.
And this is also a great way for a child to learn how to say I'm sorry and how to deal with those situations, not cover that nothing happened, just go and face it. So,
yeah. And I think the more lovingly we can respond when they come to tell us what they've done wrong, the more honest they will be with us, and they won't have to hide, and they won't have to feel guilt and shame. And it can be challenging to do that if they've done something really bad. But it's so reassuring to them to know that they come and tell me anything. I mean, as an example, when our children approach teenage years, we said to them, we want you to know that you can come and tell us anything. If you get into a mess, if you find yourself pregnant, or you think you're gay, or you're getting into drugs, or something like that, or something big has happened and you are really troubled, we want you to know, we want to be the first person to know. And we won't be mad at you. What we will do is we will lovingly support you through that challenge, because you will need all the love we can give you and all the support. And we want to tell you ahead of time that is there, so you don't have to worry about it. And that's actually how the father of the prodigal son, when he came back, he didn't yell at him. He didn't, he'd done something terrible to the family, but the father welcomes him back and loves him and appreciates him and encourages him and blesses him. So that he knows he's fully loved. And I think that that's really important, that children get that message. If you've messed up, we're here to help you. That's what parenting is about. We mess up, we learn, we're here to support you, and we grow. And we actually otherwise we teach our children to lie. When we punish them harshly for when they tell the truth, we teach them how to lie.
That's true.
Be aware of that.
You were saying about those emotions that lead to aggression. Those were frustration, fear, and hurt. So it is really important for us and for children to notice when they appear, to name them, and to let others help us. And you are also saying about the techniques of, for example, breathing. I always thought that those are, I'm sorry for saying that, but stupid ideas. But those little things like making a warm tea, or those breathing exercises, or any other exercise, it is just great way to break a line in your brain and to change your attention from anger to something else. And then when you do it in few times, you will learn that you can handle this anger, because when it grows inside, it feels like it is just so big, so huge, and you cannot control this. And those little stuff like breathing or tea or something, it just breaks the the path of anger. So it is really helpful. But what to do when a child have a huge tantrum, for example, in the church, in front of our beloved brothers and sisters?
Yes, I think that's about the worst place for a parent to experience a child's tantrum, because everyone is looking at them and they have these holy ideas about church and children and parents and what you ought to be doing. I think it's, first of all, understanding the child, and children are wired differently, and we need to be aware of what they are managing when they're in a church situation. So, for example, my youngest child was wired to be a perpetual motion child, and sitting in church is so difficult for him. And he would really struggle. He would wiggle and he'd want to move around, because actually sitting still in church is really difficult for many children. They're not wired to sit.
Adults still as well, they fall asleep.
Yeah, adults too. Yes. So we need to recognize that sitting still is not normal for a child to do for a long time. And when we make them sit still, it's really difficult for them to manage. They can actually be in pain. So anyway, my youngest one, I found that he would not wiggle so much if he cuddled me the whole time in church. And that was just the way that he was wired. So part of it is that church is not a normal, natural situation for many children. To sit quiet and still for an hour at least, with nothing to see, nothing to do sometimes, and nothing that makes sense to them, is actually really difficult. And I tell grown-ups, if you went to a church and you had to sit on a table because the chairs weren't right for you, and you had to face a blank wall, which is basically children don't have anything to see, and then you listened to a sermon in Chinese for 1 hour, how would you feel? And how would you feel if that was church for the first 10 years of your life? Would you probably not have, you'd feel a bit annoyed, at least. You wouldn't like it. Chances are you would not go back to a church that was like that. Yeah. And we need to remember that we put our children through that every week. And so that's one thing. I think also some children were wired differently. And I discovered that actually myself, my daughter, and my granddaughter at least are all what we call high sensitivity, which doesn't mean that we're sensitive people who burst into tears all the time and feel hurt all the time. But we're highly aware of our sensory input, and that can be, that can mean that there's creativity and other things going on. But it can be that for children who are highly sensitive, and many of them are, and we haven't realized it, that their senses are so bombarded with stimuli that they can't filter because they're children. And when too much is coming in that they can't manage, they will implode. And that's one of the ways, that's the things that can cause a tantrum. And it's actually why many children have tantrums in supermarkets as well as churches, because of the sensory overload that they just can't manage. And they just have a meltdown. So, and you can tell that when they just seem to fall to pieces. The other thing is that we're often not giving them eye contact in church or in the supermarket or in the car. We're looking in a different direction. We're often not focused on them and their needs. We're busy doing something else, so their needs aren't met. We're not particularly connecting with them relationally, although we're there with them. And so they're like, well, you're here, you're with me. Why doesn't this feel good? And it's because we're not really connecting.
We are focusing on being holy, so.
Yes. And so we need to realize that can be really quite challenging for a child to deal with, and for certain children. And also for us, the challenging thing is we have all these critical voices around us. And even if they don't say anything, even if they're going, oh my goodness, I've been there, my child did that once too. No one's saying that to us usually. And they think, this is about, if you were a better parent, this wouldn't happen. And that's not true. That's not true. So you need to tell yourself, I am a good parent. This is normal. My child is overwhelmed. This is actually an abnormal situation. I will do my best. So when children have a tantrum, it's stopping and thinking, what is going on here that is difficult for the child to manage? So sometimes it can be this overwhelming overstimulation that they just have to shut everything down or implode. Sometimes it's, I want to connect, you're there, but you're not connecting. So that's really frustrating when you're available but not available. And so they can't verbalize that. They can't tell you that's what they need. They just show you. And so sometimes, so the one who's overstimulated needs to be picked up, taken somewhere quiet, maybe wrapped in a blanket if that's appropriate, just held in a quiet place, no sound, just there, like, I'm here, I'm with you, a reassuring, quiet voice. Let's just go and somewhere to calm down. And maybe have a drink of water, maybe blow bubbles, maybe smell lavender and oranges and something nice, or cuddle up with a favorite toy, or go somewhere a little darker, and just, because their senses need to recover. And then there are those who need the same sort of thing, really, but they mostly need to know that you're there for them. And so you might need to give them more eye contact, which is always helpful. Eye contact, loving words, calming voice, warm hug. I love you, you're special. I'm here for you. I'm sorry that I haven't been connecting with you. What would you like to do with me now so that we can really connect well? So that's a different kind. There's some who we often take children into situations and we don't explain what's going on. We just like, oh, we'll just put them in the car, we'll get to this church, which they haven't been to before, we'll go and do this, and a new Sabbath school or a new, and we don't explain to them. And like, if someone did that to you, if someone picked you up and put you in a vehicle, took you goodness knows where, into a strange place without any explanation, you'd be a bit upset.
When you are kissed by all
grandmas
and grandpas.
Yeah, particularly being kissed by people you don't know, like that's so invasive. I remember that used to freak me out too. So I think it's just being aware. Like if you tell children, this is what's going to happen, this is how we'll behave, this is how long we're going to stay here. I know it's different and there's going to be no one there, but we'll do this while we're there. And it's really good to do something, have something you can do with them during the church service, something that you can connect with them. It's not helpful or realistic to expect a child to sit still on a chair for an hour and do nothing. My mom was wonderful in church. She'd be listening to the service, but she'd be always doing something alongside with me. Something simple, like playing a dot-to-dot game, or I would draw a scribble and she would make it into something beautiful. She would just doodle on it and I'd watch and see what she did, or we'd write little messages to each other, or it was okay for me to color something in or do something that I liked. And we need to understand that children often take in more than we realize. It's not that they're not listening. Oh, they should focus on the sermon. No, actually, some of us would focus better if we were doing something with our hands at the same time, because that's how we are wired. And that's how children are wired. What they will learn from church mostly is, did I feel loved and happy?
But they also listen. For example, my son like 2 weeks ago, there was a sermon. He was playing. He was just playing by himself. And the preacher, he asked a question, which was just rhetoric question during something. And he replied aloud because he was listening to it. So it's amazing.
It is. And I think we need to understand that they're listening when they are playing and not judge them. Play is what children do. It's how they interact, learn, occupy themselves while they listen, and not to judge that behavior in church. And obviously there's things to play with that aren't noisy or maybe more Bible story focused. And my mum always made sure we had we had a special bag for Sabbath and we could put things in it and put our own snacks and treats in it and make it special. And so that helped. Those sorts of things can really help children in those situations. And also it's being able to tell ourselves, I am not a bad parent when my child is so overwhelmed. This is the only way they can express themselves. They are in a very unusual context for a child. And sometimes we have to educate the church members around us about what it means, because they have messages about what a tantrum means from their background, their parenting, many, many years ago. And that needs to be readjusted at times. And I know a family where they have a child with very special needs who will regularly have quite spectacular tantrums because they have a very special neurological arrangement in their body. And so the family went to the church and they said, we need to educate you about our child's needs. They have special needs. We want them to come to church. And I'm sure that all of you want our children to be happy here. And this is what you need to know about our child and how to support us when this happens. So that everyone was educated in what that child needed.
What do you think would be it? I'm sorry for interrupting, but as a church member, when I would hear that, would you recommend to change a church or to deal and accept this? Because it's so much easier to just change the church, because it would be just easier for me and for my child.
Yes. Different churches respond differently. So some will become, hopefully they will listen and learn, because we're a caring community and everyone needs to feel welcome. So some of it is just about helping them look, when this happens, this is why, this is how my child is wired, and this is what we need to do to respond to this appropriately. And so there's that. I do think we need to rethink church. And again, I think that's another podcast. And I do a lot of work about intergenerational worship. So children are more regularly involved or sparked or inspired or connected during the service, so that they have less opportunity for boredom and frustration and feeling this isn't a place for me. There's nothing here for kids. And that's what troubles them.
I would like to go back for a minute to thing that you said about senses. And I would like to encourage parents to pay attention to their kids. Don't listen that they should behave like that, or I read somewhere, so they should fit into this box. I would recommend so much more just to listen to the child and to look closely how he is reacting for different situations, and then prepare him, and maybe prepare myself. When I see something, then I interact sooner before something will happen. But it takes time, and it takes engagement, and it takes paying attention, like seeing the child in this whole situation.
Yes,
I would like to ask you still, do you have any, because we were talking now about situation that happened, but parents from different children. I mean, it can be anything. Now we have many different diagnoses. So just different than average. How to survive in church and in life when you have to deal with those situations few times a day, and this is not because of your fault, it is just because of the function of the brain. So any guidelines?
I think that's really important to be aware of. And one thing I would say to parents is study your child, really get to know them, watch them, watch how they respond to different things carefully, listen to what they say and how they respond. Think about their behavior before, what happened before and after an episode of behavior that you found tricky to manage. What was this, like the triggers? And I know this because I help with my grandchildren, and we have one who's autistic spectrum disorder, and we're not quite sure what all his needs are right now. But I've learned from watching him what calms him, what is likely to trigger him. We know that something new and unexpected will often trigger quite an aggressive outburst, and he will get quite angry and frustrated. And it's learning how to calm him, how to help him sometimes get some buy-in to do the new activity, to try and think what he would like. So I need to know what he would like, what would make him want to go out the house or do what we need him to do, to understand how to calm him. So not react by having a tantrum of my own, but to remain calm, to lower my voice, to speak calmly, just sit next to him, to say, I'm here. I really care about you. You're so precious to me. And I want to help us get through this time together so that he sees it's together. I'm not against him. I'm on his side. I'm with him. But I've learned that by watching how he responds to different situations. And I think every child is unique, and parents, it's like a special discovery to discover how your child works best, and then to help them use that to help them flourish. And that does take this really careful observing and not comparing them to anybody's children, and not reading stuff that says every child must do this at this point. They're all differently wired. They're all developed differently. They're in different contexts. Different things have happened to them that are beyond our control, that they see and hear and experience outside the home. And so there's so much going on. And the more we can really understand them, connect with them, show that we empathize with them, we understand what they're going through, we care, we're here, we love you. Those are the things that tend to reassure them and take down manage the chaos that's in their mind that they can't deal with right now, and help them to settle and sort it out a bit and feel that we are there with them, helping them to manage. And that's unique for every single child. And I think the more we understand that, and we are present with them, and we coordinate with them, like they're the ones who are emerging. We are the ones who can look and see and understand. And we need to understand this child and then think, okay, that is how they're wired right now. That may change, but this is how they're wired right now. And what is the best way for me to coordinate with this child's needs, so that they experience my love and connection in the best way possible to help them flourish. And that's unique to every child, and maybe unique to every day. But it's this awareness of how they are developing, what they like, what they can do. So we don't ask them to do something beyond their developmental skills. So because that's frustrating for them. And then when we ask them to do something that they can't physically do, and then they don't do it, or they drop it, and then we punish them for dropping it. It's like giving a 2-year-old a glass of water and to climb up the stairs with. Like, something's going to go wrong, and when it does go wrong, that's our fault. We needed to have managed that differently, not punish the child for something which they had no possibility of doing well. And that's when they get super frustrated. That's really, because if someone gives you a task that they know you can't do well and expect you to do it well, you're going to feel pretty mad inside. We really need to recognize the anger that would happen to us if someone says to me, okay, Karen, I want you to climb up this rock face with a rope and tackle. I'm like, it's not going to happen. But you have to do it because I think you can. No, I am going to fail and I'm going to get hurt because of gravity. And I think it's just important to realize that, we're just all different. What we can do is at different stages is different.
Okay, so when we are dealing with anger, children's anger, we show God's love. Even when we are not showing, we are still showing this relationship that we have, that we can compare to our Father in heaven. So is there any way how we can treat this tantrum so children will learn good things about God? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. So let's talk about that. So the tantrum that I haven't talked about, I've talked about the sensory overload tantrum, the need to connect tantrum, the what on earth is going on tantrum. There's also the tantrum that's what they sometimes call the little Nero tantrum. The classic one is, I want this, I want the chocolate, I want to buy this. And actually, even when they express that, sometimes what is going on really is that they need our attention, or they need something else. But if a child is throwing a tantrum, an angry tantrum, because they want something, that is the one not to give into. Okay, because if we give into that, then we had taught them that's an okay way to ask for things. So when my grandchildren, I like the way my daughter treats it, because when my grandchildren have had those tantrums, she'll just let them be, and she'll say, you know what, I'm sorry, I don't understand when you ask for things that way. I don't understand when you talk like that and when you ask for things in that way. So I'm going to wait here, And when you are calmer and you can talk to me in your big boy voice, your big girl voice,
Wow.
then we can talk about it. But you need to know that in life, we cannot always have what we want when we want it. And we often have to wait. And so I think that's a really good way that she deals with it. So that's one way. Then with anger, it's important to understand how the brain works. So when we get triggered by stressful experience, which is what triggers some of the other tantrums, like I don't know what's going on here, I'm sensory overloaded, my parent isn't connecting with me, that puts the child into a stress state. And stress state in their brain is what leads to all of the tantrums. It's understand that's a stress. And that's adrenaline and cortisol goes into their brain. They then cannot reason. You cannot reason with someone whose brain is like that, an adult or a child, until they calm down. And that might take 40 minutes to an hour or longer. So just be aware of that. Don't try and be rational with anyone if they're upset for whatever reason in the first an hour or so. So, and when that happens, it's like a big shutter comes down in our brain and stops us feeling empathy for others. Problem is sometimes when our children have one of those tantrums, the same thing happens in our brain. We get stressed, and then we find it difficult to empathize. And so we're more likely to say and do things that will hurt others when our brain is full of stress. When our brain is calmed with oxytocin, the connection, the soothing, then we can connect with our rational thinking, our prefrontal cortex. We can talk things through. We can come up with other solutions. We can feel loved. We can feel empathy for the other. And it's important to think what's happening in my child's brain right now. And until we understood that cycle, there's a distress cycle. I'm distressed because something's happened to me. And then I express my distress this way, and that distresses you. And then you distress me, and it just gets worse, right? But the other cycle is what can happen when we can activate the caring oxytocin cycle. We show care, they calm, we wait for them to come down, we say loving, kind things. That's actually how we can help them to help their brains get into this empathy cycle. And the more we do that, the more they learn how to manage their anger, because then they're less triggered, and we can help them to deal with that.
To make it more visual, I will just add that, for example, this is our brain. And when the child gets angry, or even when we get angry, just the forehead, this part of our brain, which is responsible for logical thinking, it just opens. And we are just in a state of run or fight. And this is normal. This is just the way brain functions. And before you want close it to make the child calm down, or you calm down, nothing will work. Not even a prayer will work, because the child or we are just in state of fight or flight.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And sometimes, to be honest, making them pray can make it worse. We can pray quietly in our own head, and a prayer can be less, oh, God, help me deal with this one. And that's fine. God understands that. If that's all the prayer that we can get out quietly is, God, just help me here, know what to do. But a prayer can actually be inflammatory, because it can look like you're judging them, you're being holier than them. Unless it's done well, it can actually be something that can make things worse at that particular moment. It can, for some, be another trigger of you're the perfect person and they're the imperfect person lying on the floor. So it's just being aware of what that means to them. And for some children, it can be really calming. You can maybe just put your hand on them and say, peace, be still. Sometimes I will say to myself, be still and know that I am God. Like, oh yeah, I'm not the one in control here. And I breathe deeply, and I'll tell myself, be still and know that I am God. And that's how I calm myself down in stressful situations. And finding something calming you say to your child as they're angry, put your hand on them and find some way to say something that is loving and blessing, not fix this kid, or cast the devil out of him or something like that, which is not really very helpful.
Yeah.
So I think it is really important to understand how the brain works. And so when children have this demanding tantrum, as my daughter says, I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to wait until you can talk to me in your big person voice. And then we will talk about this. When we're both calm, we'll talk about this. And then when they want something, put it on the calendar. So, okay, you want that. So we're going to put it on the calendar that you want this thing for maybe a week or a month, depending on the age of the child. We're going to put it in the calendar. If you still want it in a week's time and nothing else has gone on the calendar in between, then we can talk about that, whether you have that or not, and whether that's good or not. But delay the gratification so they don't have this instant, if I throw a tantrum now, I'll get what I want now. Because in a week's time, they will have completely forgotten that. And put it on the calendar. You don't even have to mention it unless they do. It's on the calendar. I still want it. And maybe they will. But it's important that they learn to have this distant gratification and also to learn to express their request in a polite way. And so I teach people to say, adults and children, in this situation, when this happens, I feel ... And it would really help me if you would do ... And then I can help you by ... What ideas do you have? Now, that might be too much for a very young child, but for older ones, just help them to say, I would really like this, please. Please, can I have this, mummy? And know how to deal when mummy says no. The other challenge is that when we say no, we know automatically triggers that fight flight thing. We go into the defensive mode. And so find other ways to say no. So
I won't let you, for example.
And it can be first affirm their desire. I know it's really lovely to have treats, and I know you'd love that piece of chocolate, but and maybe try not to say but as well, because that's another thing that can trigger things. But I know you would like this piece of chocolate, and we have some chocolate at home that is even nicer than this. So we could wait till we get home, and I can let you have some chocolate after dinner tonight. So that's a way of acknowledging the child's desire, their feelings, their wants, their wishes, and that can help them. They feel, okay, they understand. And then this is what we can do. Or sometimes, you can't do it, but try and say it in a way that is understanding and positive and caring. This is not a good time for us to buy this because you are too young for that, and it would not be safe and you would not enjoy it, or something.
I would just recommend also, it sounds crazy, but it works. When you are at shop, you can just tell your child, okay, wow, this is really nice. I like it as well. Can we take a picture and show it to your dad, for example? And children, this is enough for them when we notice that they like it, that they want it. And I can say also, I really would like to have this as well. It's really nice. And sometimes it is enough for them that we have seen those needs, that we saw this child there and we connected. So it's really good advice.
Yes, it's a desire, and also to reward them when they're behaving well. So, and not always, but intermittently say, you behaved so well today. Let's go and have a little treat together because I want to celebrate with you that we've had a good day, and then do something so that they know that they will get special things unexpectedly as well. And so they don't have to throw tantrums to get things. There'll be times when there's surprises, and that can be helpful.
I would like to tell you that I have at least written 5 topics that we have to cover for next episodes. We have also prepared a few more subjects that we would like to cover, and I didn't expect that it will be so interesting, so I'm very happy about that. And I think we could cover still many different parts of this subject, but we don't want to make you bored. So it is, I think, the most important things we have already covered. When it goes about tantrums, what I will do, I will write a summary and I will make it in description so you can download it and go through that after, or print it and have it close to you on your bedside or something, to help you deal with your life, because it's tough. And I would like to summarize this episode, and I would like to say something that I read, and this is really painful, but it is so true. You don't have to hit to hurt.
It's true. It's so true.
So this connection, what you were saying, this is so important. When you don't build connection with your child, it's sometimes more painful than hitting.
Yes, absolutely. That's such a true thing to say. It's so important to realize. This is the most important thing. And it's what God does for us. He's connecting with us as often as he can, telling us he loves us. And more often we can do that to our child, the more they will flourish. And I will talk more about that in the future.
I would like to give you also one of my favorite texts that lift me up when I have tantrums. It is written in Matthew 3 and verse 17. It is the baptism of Jesus. And there is written, "And a voice from heaven said, 'This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased.'" In my language, it is written, "I am very happy."
Yes.
And this is something that Karen also said. Have you told your child, "I love you. I am so happy with you"? Do you know that God is saying the same to you as a parent? He loves you and he's very happy with you, and he's very proud that you are dealing with your life the best way you can, but he's also there to help you. So remember about that. Dear Karen, thank you very much for accepting my invitation. Thank you for giving us peaceful advices, peaceful, normal, ground-based advices. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask you for a closing prayer.
Thank you. I'll be happy to pray. Father God, we thank you that you love us so much. We can only love because you first loved us, and you show us what love is like. And then you invite us to share that love with others. And that's the kind of love we want to show to our children. So help us come to you to open our hearts to be filled with your love, so that we can be like funnels that catches as much of your love as possible and channels it into our children's lives, so that they can grow and flourish and love us, love you, love others better, because they have been loved first. We pray that you will guide us on this journey of discovery into our children's minds and hearts and lives, and help us to study them well, to learn from you how to meet their needs and to bring them joy and peace and love, so that the fruit of the Spirit is seen in our life, in our relationship with them, and in their life as they grow. Thank you for being such a loving Father who is patient to us. And I thank you that, as it says in Isaiah 40, you gently lead those that have young. So whatever we're facing today, know that you are gently leading us. You want to guide us slowly. You know we have the most important job to do, and you will carry our little lambs with us as you guide us slowly through life. We're never without you, our good shepherd. We thank you for your love in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
See you in next episode.
Yes, see you again too. This has been really fun. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.